Hello, my dear students. I hope you all have been doing well. So, from today, we are going to start our lecture number 2, and this lecture is about metabolism of glucose. This is part 1 of lecture number 2. In this part, we will be studying that how glucose, what are the pathways of the glucose metabolism, general introduction, and then what is the how glucose metabolize. So we will start from the next slide. So what is the metabolism? Metabolism actually set of chemical reactions. Uh, it include both anabolism and catabolism. It is the set of chemical reaction by which a macromolecule like carbohydrate, here we are talking about the carbohydrate, but the metabolism, if when we are talking about the metabolism of any macromolecule, for example lipid, protein, carbohydrate, so the metabolism is the set of chemical reaction that is used to break down or to synthesize a macromolecule. So here in this lecture we are studying about the metabolism of carbohydrate. So in this case we will say that the metabolism of a carbohydrate is the set of chemical reaction that is used to either break carbohydrate molecule into simpler sugar or either make up the carbohydrate molecule from uh, simple sugars. So this was the definition of the metabolism. So the carbohydrate metabolism include both the process means anabolism and catabolism. If we synthesize if we will discuss about what is the anabolism of carbohydrate. Anabolism is the set of chemical reaction by which we synthesize or our body synthesize large or complex carbohydrate from simpler sugar. So this process needs energy. And what is the catabolism or catabolism of glucose or catabolism of carbohydrate? Catabolism is the set of chemical reactions by which we break the larger carbohydrate, for example polysaccharide, or larger glucose into the smaller molecule or simpler sugar. For example, if we break down polysaccharide, that is larger carbohydrate, into the small monosaccharides, so this means breakdown takes place via set of chemical reaction, and this process is called as catabolism. And this process always release energy. Whenever you have to synthesize bigger molecule from a smaller one, you need to give uh, energy. However, whenever you have to break down a larger molecule into a smaller one, the energy will release from the system. So the carbohydrate metabolism include both the aerobic and anaerobic breakdown of glucose. What does it mean, aerobic and anaerobic? It means that whenever carbohydrate will break down from a higher sugar to the smaller one, it can be break down either in the presence of oxygen or in the absence of oxygen. If carbohydrate is breaking down from larger polysaccharide to smaller simpler sugar or smaller monosaccharide, so in the absence of energy, so it will be anaerobic breakdown of glucose or anaerobic metabolism of glucose, or you can say anaerobic catabolism of glucose. And if the glucose break down from the larger polysaccharide to a smaller monosaccharide in the presence of oxygen, so we will say that this is aerobic catabolism or aerobic breakdown of glucose. So this was the aerobic and anaerobic metabolism. So all these anabolic and catabolic breakdown of glucose takes place via different chemical reaction or set of chemical reactions. And here I will explain you these chemical reactions, introduction of these chemical reactions, and then these chemical reactions we say as these are the pathways. So what are the pathways of glucose metabolism? Means the pathways mean the term pathways means chemical reaction, set of chemical reactions. So when these set of chemical reactions the set of chemical reactions that are involved for the breakdown or the making up of carbohydrate molecule are say as the pathways of glucose metabolism. So we are having here different pathways. I will explain you one by one. First pathway of glucose metabolism, that is catabolism. First pathway that catabolize glucose means that break down glucose larger molecule into simpler one is the glycolysis. So what happened in glycolysis? In glycolysis glucose molecule break down into simpler sugar. So this process release energy, and this is the catabolism of glucose. Glycolysis is the catabolism of glucose, because in this pathway larger glucose molecule converted into simpler one. And the other pathway is glycogenesis. So what is this glycogenesis? Actually it is the anabolic pathway of glucose metabolism. What happened in this pathway? In this pathway we synthesize glycogen, that are large storage of glucose. So we synthesize glycogen from smaller glucose molecules. So whenever we synthesize your body synthesize glycogen stores from the glucose molecule, simpler glucose molecules. So this process is called as glycogenesis. So this in this pathway we need energy, because this is the anabolic process. And the third pathway of glucose metabolism is glycogenolysis. This is the catabolic pathway. What does it mean? Catabolic means, it means that it releases energy and there will be the breakdown of glycogen. As the name indicate, glycogenolysis. So it is the breakdown of glycogen um, uh, into glucose, and this pathway is the catabolic pathway, and this is the one of the metabolic pathway of glucose, and then this releases energy, and in this pathway glycogen break down into glucose. And the other pathway is the gluconeogenesis, and in this pathway glucose synthesize, carbohydrate synthesize from non-carbohydrate sources, for example from amino acid, lipid and protein. So whenever amino acid, lipid and protein made up glucose, and glucose synthesized from non-glucose precursor, so we say this pathway is termed as gluconeogenesis. So this is also uh, one of the pathway of catabolic reactions. So another pathway is the pentose phosphate pathway or hexose monophosphate shunt. So in this pathway what happened? This pathway generate NADPH and one of the sugar, that is pentose sugar or 5 carbon sugar. So this is the pathway that synthesize 5 carbon sugar. So this is one of the anabolic pathway, and the sugar that synthesized by this pathway is used to synthesize nucleic acid. And then we are having finally a pathway that is citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle, or we can also say is it as tricarboxylic acid cycle. What happened in this cycle? All the carbohydrate metabolic product that synthesize or break down in all the pathway that we have studied right now, glycolysis, gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis, or gluconeogenesis. All the metabolic product of all these pathways enter in this cycle that we say that Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. And finally, after the entrance in this cycle, these all product produce ATP. So this pathway is termed as tricarboxylic cycle. So this is here the summary of all these pathways that we will be studying in next slides in more detail. Here the glucose breakdown, that is glycolysis, glycogenesis, that is the formation of glycogen molecule from simpler sugars or glucose, and this is the glyconeogenesis, that is the breakdown of glycogen, and this is the gluconeogenesis, made up of glucose from non carbohydrate precursor. And here in the next slide we are seeing here these all pathways are not so simple as we have seen in the previous slide. So the all these pathways, that is glycolysis, pentose phosphate shunt, or glycogenolysis, glycogenesis, and gluconeogenesis, and TCA cycle, tricarboxylic cycle, these are all the metabolic reactions. You can see here these are not simpler one, these are all complex metabolic reactions that takes place in our body. So in the next slides we will be studying one by one all the pathways in the details. So this was the part 1 of my lecture number 2, and now we are going, thank you very much, we are going to study our about part 2 of the lecture number 2.